In this video we're going to be solving equations by completing the square. I've got 5 different questions to go through and they get increasingly more complex as we go along. The first one's quite a basic one. We have x squared plus 4x plus 2 equals 0. So for this one we're going to complete the square on these two terms here. So we'll do x plus 2, and that's in the brackets, all squared, and then we have to take away the 4 which comes out of this if we were to expand this, because 2 times 2 is 4, so we're going to take that away, but then we need to add on 2, so minus 4 plus 2 equals 0. Collect these like terms, so we'll get minus 2. So x plus 2 all squared minus 2 equals 0. And then we need to rearrange and solve for x. So we're going to make x a subject, so we'll have x plus 2 squared equals 2. Square root, so we'll have x plus 2 equals plus or minus square root of 2. And then x equals minus 2 plus or minus root 2. So if you're going to write out your solutions, I won't do this for every example, I'll do it for this first one. We'll have x equals minus 2 plus root 2, and you can solve that to get a decimal if you want to, or x equals minus 2 minus root 2. So we have 2 different solutions for x because of this plus or minus thing which comes when we square root. Let's look at the next one. So again, we're completing the square on these 2 terms here. So we'll have x plus 6 all squared, and then we're going to take away 36 because 6 squared is 36, and we're going to add 3, which is this part here. That all equals 0. So we have x plus 6 all squared minus 33 equals 0. Rearrange it. X plus 6 all squared equals 33. Square root it. X plus 6 equals plus or minus square root of 33. And then take that 6 to the other side. So x equals minus 6 plus or minus root 33. So again, we'll get 2 solutions from this. I'm not going to write them out, but it'll be minus 6 plus root 33, or minus 6 minus root 33. Moving on to this one, where there's some negatives involved. We're going to complete the square again on these 2 terms. So it's always the x squared and the x term. So we'll have x minus 7 over 2, and then put the bracket in, all squared, and then we have to square this term, so it's going to be minus 49 over 4 minus 4. So if we're going to solve this, minus 49 over 4 minus 4, I'm going to convert that 4 into a fraction, so that'll be minus 16 over 4. So we'll have minus 49 over 4 minus 16 over 4, which is going to give us minus 55 over 4. And obviously we have this x minus 7 over 2 all squared on all of these lines. Then rearrange it, so we'll have x minus 7 over 2 all squared equals 55 over 4. Square root it, I'm just going to do it up here. We'll have x minus 7 over 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 55 over 4, and then x equals 7 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 55 over 4. let's move on to this fourth one. Here it's not equal to 0. If you notice in all the previous examples they've all been equal to 0. Because it's not equal to 0, we need to make it equal to 0. So that's going to be our first step to rearrange it. So I'm going to bring this over to here. So we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. So we'll end up with 3x squared minus 5x minus 14 equals 0. Completing the square on these two terms. We're going to have quite a tricky one, it looks like here. So we're going to divide it all by 3. And in previous ones where you don't have this equal sign, where it's just an expression, we'd have to factorize it out and put it outside the bracket. But because it's an equation, we can just divide everything by 3. So divide it all by 3, we'll get x squared. The reason I'm dividing by 3 is to get this coefficient of x squared as 1 minus 5 over 3x minus 14 over 3 equals 0. It's much easier if we leave it as fractions rather than decimals. Now we're going to complete the square on these two terms. So we'll have x minus half of 5 over 3 is 5 over 6, all squared, minus 14 over 3. And also we have to minus this number squared, which is going to be 25 over 36. So we're going to have to do minus 14 over 3 minus 25 over 36. We'll have to give them the same common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be 36. So they're both going to be fractions over 36. And we'll have minus 14. Sorry, minus 4, not minus 14. We'll have to multiply that by 12. Which is going to give us 168 minus 25. So minus 168 minus 25 is going to give us minus 193 over 36. And we have x minus 5 over 6 all squared. Now we need to rearrange and solve for x. So we're going to have x minus 5 over 6 all squared equals 193 over 36. Bring it up here. I'm going to square root it. We'll have x minus 5 over 6 equals square root of 193 over 36, and that's plus or minus. Then we'll have x equals 5 over 6 plus or minus the square root of 193 over 36. Moving on to the final example. Again, it's one that we're going to have to rearrange here because it's not equal to 0. So let's rearrange it. This time we've got a negative x squared term, so I'm going to make it positive and have everything on this side of the equation. So I'm going to have 0 equals 2x squared minus 5x minus 15. Then I'm going to divide the whole thing by 2 to get that x squared coefficient as 1. So 0 equals x squared minus 5 over 2x minus 15 over 2. Then I want to complete the square on these two terms here, which is going to give us 0 equals x minus 5 over 4 all squared minus 5 over 4 squared is going to be 25 over 16 minus 15 over 2. So again we're going to have to make these some common denominators. So 0 equals x minus 5 over 4 squared, and then minus 25 over 16, and to make the common denominator 16 we have to multiply top and bottom by 8, so we'll have 120 over 16, which is going to leave us with minus 145 over 16. Then rearranging and solving for x, so I'm going to have x minus 5 over 4 all squared equals 145 over 16. Square root it, x minus 5 over 4 equals plus or minus the root of 145 over 16. And just keep going. Have x equals 5 over 4 plus or minus square root of 145 over 16. And in fact, I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit more. So we'll have x equals 5 over 4 plus or minus, we can square root the 16 on the bottom, so it'll be 145 over 4, and so we can write it as x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 145 over 4. And in fact, we could have tidied up almost all of our previous examples, such as this one here. We could have made this 6, and it would be 5 plus or minus root 193 over 6. But it doesn't really matter either way, we're going to get two solutions. I'm just going to do plus or minus. So if we just concentrate on our last one, of 5 plus or minus root 145 over 4. Obviously give us two solutions.